All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to those of you all who were on previously. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning to you, wherever you're joining us from today. My name is Udo Nwogu, and I'm one of the co-founders of Building African Fashion. And we're truly excited to have you all joining us for today's conversation on funding in Africa's fashion industry. At Building African Fashion, for those of you who may not know us, our mission is very simple. Is to help unlock the systems, knowledge, and capital that African businesses need to grow sustainably and compete globally. We've seen incredible creativity and demand for African fashion on runways, in retail, and just across global culture. But one challenge that we still have and that continues to come up again and again is access to the right kind of financing to grow during the right stage. And today's session is part of that effort, part of our broader effort to demystify fashion financing and connect our ecosystem to the tools that have powered some of the world's largest and most successful brands. Purchase order financing in particular is one of the most critical and sometimes overlooked mechanism in the fashion industry. It's what allows brands to actually fulfill large retail orders, manage production cycles, and scale beyond small batch production, which is where a lot of our brands on the continent are currently. For many designers, the gap between securing an order and delivering it is really where growth either happens or doesn't happen, or where it stalls. For the African fashion ecosystem, this conversation is very important. As more of our designers begin to gain access to international markets and buyers, the ability to finance production at scale will determine who can truly capitalize on what is happening right now within the African fashion space. Understanding models like factoring and purchase order financing is not just helpful, but is essential to help us build the globally successful fashion businesses that we want on the continent. So that's why we're here today. And I'm not going to talk too much longer because I want our speaker to really take it away for us and share with us from his decades in the industry. But before we begin, as I mentioned previously, to those of us that were on before, we want to make this session as interactive as possible. If you can, in the chat, please let us know where you're coming from, what region of the world you're joining us from today. Because we're online, we often get people from as far away as India joining us. So please let us know where you're joining us from. And also let us know what role you play in the fashion ecosystem, or even if you're not in fashion, let us know what function or what area you work in, whether you're a designer, manufacturer, retailer, or somebody who's an investor, or just in between somehow. It's always useful and powerful to us to see who is in the room, in the virtual room with us whenever we have these events. And then a quick rundown of today's session, again, before I hand it over so that we can have our speaker come on. We'll start with a brief introduction of our speaker today, followed by him coming on to really host the main segment of today's session. Following that, we will open up it up to you in the audience for Q&A. So that you can ask your questions and really engage him interactively. So as we go along, make notes of your questions, your comments. You can also feel free to put them in the chat as we go along. And then at the end, we'll do our best to get through as many of them as we can. We have a lot of people who are registered for this session today. So we'll do our best during that time to see how we can get to as many questions as we can. So with that, we're honored to have our speaker here today again, somebody who has been in the industry for so long and has helped many brands become successful. To introduce him, I'm going to hand over to one of our team members, Liz Lenjo, to share more about our speaker and usher him onto the virtual stage. So Liz, over to you.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you, Udochi. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Liz Lenjo, as Udo introduced me. I'm based in Kenya, currently joining this call from a beautiful sea town by the name Malindi. And I'm one of the advisors of Building African Fashion. And it's my absolute pleasure today to introduce Gary Wassner, who's joining us here. And I've known Gary from a few years back when I was at the Fashion Law Boot Camp at Fordham Law in New York. And I think for me, I found him very profound because he made some statements back then that really shaped how I approach law and how I assist my clients in the fashion industry. And just hear him speak last time, I was like, if I was a fashion designer, I wouldn't need a Liz, I would need a Gary. So before Gary takes the floor, allow me to introduce him and read his bio. So Gary Wassner is the CEO of Hildan Corporation, known as the company behind many of Seventh Avenue's most prestigious fashion companies. He has provided financing and or factoring for America's and the world's most iconic designer labels, which include Jason Wu, Amiri, Isabel Marant, Golden Goose, Naeem Khan, Jonathan Simkai, Lacan Smith, Sakai, I hope I'm spelling it that, I'm pronouncing it right. John Elliott, Fear of God, and Rick Owens are only a few fashion's finest that have benefited from his work and relationships in the industry, as well as from his ability to provide factoring, financing, and production funding. Recently, Gary became a partner in the private equity firm Brand Velocity Group, BVG, to helm their fashion acquisition division. BVG has made 5 acquisitions and investments to date and is actively seeking to make additional investments in apparel and consumer goods companies. Named as one of Fashionista's 50 most influential people in fashion, Gary is also an advisory board member of Fordham Law's Fashion Law Institute, a board member of Fashion Group International, FGI, a member of FIT's Social Justice Advisory Council, and a passionate supporter of all causes related to the fashion industry in New York City and globally. Gary's expertise and reputation in the fashion industry has precipitated multiple related opportunities for him. Gary appeared in the Lifetime television show Project Runway Fashion Startup as one of the principal investors. He also writes articles for Women's Wear Daily WWD and the CFDA when called upon to do so. He is frequently quoted by the Wall Street Journal, Business of Fashion, BOF, the New York Post, and other industry-related publications. Please join me in welcoming Gary. Gary, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today. Over to you.
Thank you all, and I appreciate you taking your time to come and listen. I know the hours might be quite unusual for some of you to be doing this, but for me in New York, it's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so perfect time. Uh, just to start off, I've been financing fashion for almost 50 years now. Uh, we are a private company owned by my family. My son works here, my nephew, my cousin, my other son. I have quite a few. Uh, we make our own decisions. We work quickly for our clients, which is a necessity in the fashion industry when it comes to financing. You can't take months to make decisions if a company needs funding. But first, let me go back and explain what factoring is, if for those of you who don't know. You're a young brand or a mature brand. You're shipping to stores globally. You get great purchase orders and you think, fantastic, my goal has been achieved, and all I have to do now is ship it. Well, but that's not the case. You have to know if those stores are going to be able to pay you. And as we've seen in the past year, particularly, there have been some very large bankruptcies in retail that have affected hundreds and hundreds of brands. And what we do as a factor is you get your orders. Once you get them, you send them to us electronically. We have an account set up for you here. We tell you which orders we will guarantee, meaning if you ship that order according to order and sample and within the start, ship, and cancel date written on the purchase order, we guarantee that if the store fails to pay you, we will pay you. You send us all your orders, we approve as many as we can. We then look at those we cannot approve and we give you a reason why. So you know how to approach that store, that retailer, to make sure you're safe going forward once you ship. If we decline an order for past due, for financial instability, if you want to produce merchandise for that store, you produce it on COD terms or prepayment terms. More intelligent in a store in that situation would be take a deposit that covers your cost of goods and production, and the rest COD or prepay. For those that we approve, obviously you go right into production. You don't have an issue. You ship it according to the start, ship, cancel, etc. We ledger it here. You send us all your invoices either electronically or PDF, however you best need to. We ledger everything. We do all of your collection work. You don't need to call stores all over the world and say, hey, my invoice is due, please pay me. We do that. So we do your credit work in the beginning, tell you which stores are credit worthy, which we will guarantee. We then do your collection work so that you don't need to. And the reason why it's so effective, we currently factor over 450 brands. Brands many of you have heard of that are global brands, large, small, medium. Some of our brands do $1 billion at retail. Some do $100,000 at wholesale. Some do $100,000 at wholesale. I believe in working with young talent. I believe in nurturing young brands. I started with Tommy Hilfiger when he opened his business. I financed Tommy. I financed his wife in her own company, his sister in her own company, his daughter in her own company. I financed Michael Kors when he opened his business. Marc Jacobs. I don't know if you know the designer Willie Smith. Some very famous designers who are unfortunately no longer with us. And currently, we factor and finance some of the biggest names in fashion today. Many of them. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is not for a feather in my cap, but to tell you that if you are part of Hildan, if you are factored by us, when we go to collect from a retailer like a Saks, a Nordstrom, and Neiman's, we are supplying them with, at times, 35% of their product. We are their supply chain for independent brands. We, along with Kering and LVMH and Richemont, supply the majority of product to the major department stores and specialty stores around the globe. So when it comes to collecting, we go to them with 150 brands that we need to be paid for. Now, if they don't pay us on time, we're going to stop the flow of merchandise to that store. So if you're a retailer, think, who are you going to pay first? Hildan or an individual brand that supplies one line of product to you? Clearly, you're going to pay us. During the Saks and Neiman Marcus problems, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, they filed bankruptcy in January. We guaranteed our clients payment straight through November of last year when no one in the industry was guaranteeing Saks invoices. Our clients did not get hurt when Saks filed for bankruptcy. We are paying out over $40 million in claims to our clients. Now, we hedge our risk in our own ways so that we're not taking all that risk on by ourselves. I never approved Saks in an unlimited fashion. I knew the problems. I had an open line of communication with management there, and I do now as well. We are now approving Saks in their bankruptcy to the tune of we're shipping them probably $50 million a month now. Major supply chain for them, and we then get paid before anybody else gets paid. They need the merchandise, etc. So if you're a small brand and you're with us, we do the collecting for you. And they will pay you as quickly as they will pay Golden Goose or Isabel Marant or Rick Owens, or anyone from Dior down the line. Because they need the product. They can't afford for us to tell our clients we won't approve their orders, and therefore our clients will not ship. They need the inventory. That was why they failed in the past. They could not get enough inventory to maintain a high margin and ship and sell enough merchandise to stay in business. So anyway, those are two of the major things we do. In addition to credit checking for you, guaranteeing the orders, invoicing, ledgering, and collecting, we also lend against your invoicing. So once you produce and ship, again, according to terms of your purchase order, we will lend you against the aggregate of your invoices. So you're shipping 20 stores, you're shipping 2,000 stores, doesn't matter. You assign all of those invoices to us. Every one of your invoices is marked. This account is owned and payable to Hildan Corporation. All of them pay to us. If we lend you 75% against 100% of your invoices at the day you ship, that gives you the cash flow to then pay your contractors, pay your staff, and enough funding because of your margin to begin your next collection and move forward, constantly rolling product and rolling your funding each season. What is so effective about the way factoring works and the way financing in the factoring world works is as you grow, your line of credit grows. So if we're lending you 70% against what you ship, the more you ship, the more funding you have. So it's an organic process, whereas you grow, your line of credit grows. It's not like a bank where you borrow $100,000 or $10,000 and you need more and you go back to them and you ask for a line increase and it takes 4 months for them to approve your line increase. This occurs every single day. As you ship, you draw what we've contractually agreed to as a percentage against what you've shipped. Now, I know part of this conversation is about production funding. We do quite a bit of production funding, which is you send us your orders, as I explained before. We evaluate them. We tell you which ones we can guarantee. We then look at the amount we can guarantee, the total dollar amount we can guarantee, and we lend you a percentage against those orders so that you can produce them. Now, I want to be honest and frank about this. We don't lend on purchase orders to all of our clients. It's very risky for a lender because what if you don't produce them? What if you buy fabric, something goes wrong, you cut it, it's bad, you can't ship it. It's very different than lending against an invoice for merchandise you've already shipped. There's much less risk, obviously, for us there, as long as you are shipping a product that's properly made and constructed and according to the order that you've received from the retailer. But on the production side of things, if you buy fabric from one source and ship it to a contractor somewhere else, and you're waiting for other pieces and parts to come in, the likelihood of error is very high. So we do production funding for proven companies who have been with us for at least 1 or 2 seasons, have proven to us that they can manufacture and ship on time, that the product is of the right quality, the fit is correct, and retailers who have purchased it have paid us for it. So it doesn't happen on day one unless you're a very established company and have a long history of proven deliveries and payments. But I have done production funding for all of the brands that I've spoken about over the years, brands like Tom Brown for many years and Marc Jacobs for many years. Now, understand, and I'm sure many of you wonder, how am I ever going to get there? How am I ever going to be a brand like that? All of these brands that I've mentioned and hundreds more all started in the same place, the exact same place. Nobody has opened a brand that in day one was a brilliant, successful brand. Most of the brands that we see in the world today are entrepreneurial, began with one or two individuals who wanted to be in their own businesses, wanted to control the fate of their own destinies, and wanted to own a business themselves. Many of them were very limited in capital. They learned how to be efficient. They learned how to do every aspect of the business. All of this learning process has been critical to the success of so many brands. If you don't know how to cost a garment, if you don't know whether your pricing is right, if you don't know what margin, gross margin you need to have on your product before you price it and sell it, you're not going to succeed. All of these things you must know, and you learn them. And if you start your own business, you learn them very quickly. You can work for another company for a while before you begin your own business. But if it's too big a company, you're only going to see a fraction of what you need to learn. Working for a smaller company is much better. You then get to see every aspect, from logistics to sampling to product development, merchandising, production, shipping, public relations, marketing, all of the components that ultimately go into creating a successful global brand. So I look for talent first. I look for the individuals that I feel I have the competence I can trust before I'll go in and finance a company. The first questions I ask when I meet with a brand, a designer, is, who's your customer? Who are you designing for? Who are you making product for? Now, we are fortunate that fashion, apparel in general, is one of the most sustainable, not in an environmental way, one of the most sustainable products in the world. We see so many other industries, particularly now with AI, coming and becoming obsolete in a short period of time. The one thing you can count on is that everyone gets up in the morning and gets dressed. We go into our drawer, our closet, our wardrobe, whatever it might be, and we get dressed if we're going out. Even if we're going to be on a Zoom, at least we get partially dressed. Clothing is not going to become obsolete. The way we make it, the way we design it, how we produce it, those things will change and evolve, and they have tremendously. But the product itself, the end product, will never go away. So we're not in a business like a typewriter business where it doesn't exist anymore, or a Polaroid camera business that no longer exists. Or if you thought you were entering a tech field and became a programmer, programmers' jobs are now in danger because of AI. It can replace them very easily. And it's getting more and more sophisticated. So it's nice to know you're in an industry where the product you make will always have a marketplace, always. Now, again, those marketplaces change. The way we sell it changes. Direct to consumer obviously has made a huge difference. So the subsidiary and the affiliate companies like an Amazon come around and provide new platforms for us as an industry. But that's great. It doesn't hurt us to have new platforms and new sources of distribution for our products. So you're entering an industry that in that respect is one of the most sustainable in the world, and historically. And we know this, and we look back historically. When did people not wear clothes? When did they go naked to meetings? No, it doesn't happen. So that's a comfort. to all of us. We're going to spend so much time and energy in developing a brand or product. We don't want to see it being taken over by something that we've never dreamed of. It's hard to dream of something that will take over clothing. So back to the beginning, where are you as a designer? What do you need to learn as a designer? As I said, the first thing I ask a client, a potential client, is who's your consumer? Who's your customer? Who are you designing for? We are the perfect merger of commerce and art. You can't have art in fashion without the commerce part. And if you think that you are going to just create beautiful things that you hang on a wall, you're not going to be doing it for very long. You need to have a consumer in mind. When I ask who is your consumer, I want to know where they live. I want to know what are the brands they buy. I want to know what size they are, what demographic they are, where they're localized. Is it urban? Is it rural? Is it America? Is it Africa? Is it Europe? You need to know when you begin the design process who you're designing for. Now, it doesn't really matter who that is, as long as you know it yourself, who it is. If you say to me, if I'm interviewing a great creative designer and I've been to their show and I've seen their product and it's like really out there, and I ask them, who are you designing for? And they say, well, I'm designing for myself. People either like it or they don't. That's not the attitude you need to have in a commercial business. Yes, if you're an artist, fine. And if you plan on selling a piece as a work of art, if you plan on being in the fashion business, you need to have a very clear sense of who your consumer is. You need to price your product accordingly. You need to be consistent. There are generally three principles that people need to abide by in this industry: fit, quality, consistency. So consistency overlaps them all. Consistency and quality, consistency and fit. So when your consumer comes back second time because they love what they bought the first time, they're not going to be surprised that all of your fit is completely different. And now they can't buy it because it's no longer appropriate for them, whether it's the width of their arm, the length of their arm, their height, their waist, their dimension, their shape. You design for specific people. You mark and grade your product, of course, as we all do in this industry, up and down. You learn as time goes by whether your consumer is a size 12, a size 14, or a size 2 and 4. And you focus your core product on the size range that you see your consumers gravitating towards. But you need to know all of this. You need to be consistent. And the third aspect, I said there were three: fit, quality. The third, of course, is style. You need to have a unique style that tells your story so that people want to buy your product because of you. Now, when I mention global brands or large brands to individuals in a seminar, when I teach at FIT or at Parsons, and I say, I mention a brand, immediately an image comes to mind in their head, in their brain of that brand. That's your goal. It's always got to be your goal, to develop a collection so that when the name is mentioned, you don't have to think, what's that? Right away, an image of that product. When I say Rick Owens, people know if they're in this level of the fashion world, they know what Rick Owens is and what he represents. And that's critical, whether you're making $10 products for Target or whether you're making $10,000 products for Bergdorf Goodman. It's critical that the consumer knows what you stand for, who you are. If you're a sustainable company and that is your motive and your goal, then people need to know that. It has to be expressed in the apparel itself. Either with your marketing campaign or a tag or a label or it has to look appropriate for that market. But whatever it is you're trying to achieve, You need to create that in a look. This is like, if you're an author, I happen to write books, I write novels. And I remember an editor once said to me, Gary, show, don't tell when you write. The same applies to fashion. You can't explain to people what your product's about. The product has to do the explaining. So show your consumer. Don't be a victim of having to tell them, well, when you put it on, it looks different, or yeah, I mean, I love this category and you have to get used to it. You cannot explain a product to a consumer. It must resonate with them. Now, there are all kinds of consumers, all kinds of products. So it doesn't mean you have to be generic. It doesn't mean you have to follow another company and their brand and their success, but it has to tell a story, and the product itself has to resonate with your consumer. So number one, you have to identify your consumer. Number two, you have to design into that consumer's world. Now, the bigger the world of that consumer, the more opportunity you have. That's your choice. And it's a choice that's made based upon what price point you want to sell in, whether it's mass market, whether it's a Zara, whether it's, as I said before, your price point and your market. There are plenty of consumers in this world. We're all consumers. We're all wearing clothing. So it's a decision that you make as a brand owner, as an entrepreneur, where you want to be in the market and what kind of product you want to design for the next 30 years. Because once you establish a brand, you can't automatically turn around about face unless the brand is failing, about face and tell your consumers, no, that's not me anymore. I'm going to do something completely different. Well, what would be the point of that? You're looking to build sustainable companies. It's a commercial industry. You're looking to sell as much product as you can. So you have to be very small. One thing that I find pretty astounding when I teach is that so many entrepreneurs, so many young designers, so many people who want to open up their own companies don't know what a cash flow is. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you're new to the industry that you don't know what it is, but a cash flow should be in front of you at all times if you're an entrepreneur. What it tells you is, based upon the resources you have, based upon what you project to sell, what your margin is, what you're going to have left over a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, 6 months from now to work with. So it's going to project what availability you will have based upon your financing, based upon your resources, your income, etc. That's where factoring and funding comes in. It provides cash flow. So if you know that once I ship $100,000, tomorrow I will have $70,000 in cash available to pay my bills if I'm factoring. If you're on your own, you need more capital. You need a bank loan, which is limited, as I said, in duration and an amount. Or you need to have a very wealthy partner who's willing to fund all of this for you as you build a brand. All of these are viable options, but the most viable is to do it yourself. Establish financing relationships so that when you put your own cash flow together and you know what your financial needs are, you can meet them. The worst thing you want to do is get orders that you can't produce. You don't have the funds to buy the fabric. You don't have the funds to pay your contractors. You need to know what you need and when you need it. And that's what a cash flow is all about. So the one tool that an entrepreneur should always have on their desk in front of them is a cash flow. Not hard to produce. And you can certainly have in it opportunities that you can hope to realize, but remember that they're hopes. They're not part of your actual existing cash that's available to you to build your business. So in a nutshell, I've said a lot, I've talked a lot, my mouth is getting dry. I've given you the basics of what a factor does and can do. What you as an entrepreneur need to know going into this game, and what you need to focus on in order to succeed in this world. So I'm going to take a break and ask you and open the floor to questions. Let you ask away. Your turn.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Sure.
So as Gary has said, this is now time for us to ask questions. As I've mentioned, you can feel free to put your questions directly in the chat if you don't want to speak. If you want to speak, just use the hand raising icon and we'll call on you to ask the question that you may have for Gary. So I guess while we are thinking, one question for you, Gary, is you mentioned that when clients or potential clients come to you, the first question you ask is, who's your customer? Who are you making for? And then you look at three particular areas to decide if they are a match for your organization or if they have the right product. Look at fit, quality, and style. Of those three, when brands come to you, which of the three do you find is usually the most lacking or the one that usually needs most work?
Well, style, obviously, there's so much great design, so many great designers out there
Yeah.
that when I talk to them, and there's so many different marketplaces, so style
Mhm.
is somewhat personal.
Yes.
What I mean is that the designer has an understanding of what is going to work on a
Mhm.
male or a female body,
Yeah.
or a child's body.
Yeah.
And if they have particularly interesting style and it stands out, that's a real plus for me because there are a lot of generic brands in the market, and we don't need certain categories that are already filled, and the
Mhm.
stores will tell you frequently, well, I've got that covered. So you need to be unique in some ways. You need to provide a product that has a style that is new or interesting or acceptable or beautiful. So I look at that. That's not the only thing I look at, because one without the other, as I said, is irrelevant. If you have great
Yeah.
style and you ship a product that's of poor quality, it's not going to work. You're not going to be successful. No question about it. So quality is just as critical as good style.
Yeah.
As far as fit, again, same thing. You can produce a great collection, design a beautiful collection, and you ship it and to the stores, and the sleeves are down to here, and the neck is so tight that they can't get it over their head. Fit. What is your fit? Are you using a fit model? Are
Yeah.
you who you're draping your product on? What shape mannequin, what size, who are you designing for? So I can't say any one of those three is more important than the other, because any one without the other, the product's not going to work. So
Of course.
those are the three things that I need to know. You've got a handle on it. You know
Yeah.
how to manage it.
Yes. Thank you. So it looks like we have one question in the chat. It's coming from Natanya. And the question is, how would this work? I guess factoring and purchase order financing. How would it work in regards to accessories brands, a bag brand?
It's exactly the same as apparel. You get the same kind of purchase order for an accessory. We finance and factor many, many, many accessories and handbags, and always have, and shoes. Anything that is going to a retailer on terms, we can work with. So it's no different in accessories. Your markets are very similar, or now everybody's shipping 10, 11 months of the year, because consumer wants newness all the time. They're constantly looking for new product. Accessories, I think, make it a little easier to do that than ready to wear, uh, depending upon what the accessory is. But it's no different. We handle it the exact same way, as long as you're selling to retailers or direct to consumer, and you have a track record.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. And we had a hand raised. Max, do you still want to ask a question?
Yeah, I can go. I just wanted to give a chance to the other people in the chat first,
Oh,
but
please, you can go ahead. You raised your hands first, so
all
yeah.
right. I mean, first of all, thank you, BF, for organizing this and for everyone on the call. Hi, Gary. My name is Max. I'm actually an art historian and a curator, but like as an extension of my work in the arts, I've ended up advising a few young African designers and brands, um, helping them with like the sort of creative and intellectual positioning of their brands. So that has led me into like the LVMH and Woolmark prizes and learning about that. And kind of one sentiment that I get from a lot of the brands that I work with is like some hesitation, right, about the department store and wholesale model. Um, and how, there some of them are going out of business, losing influence. This idea of purchasing power shifting from Europe and America to more Asia and the Gulf. And so my question to you, which may be too broad, I don't know, is kind of how might you advise some of us on this call to think about how to position ourselves as young brands
Definitely not
in
too
this
broad.
shifting market, and how might working with you and sort of your type of company still be something that is relevant in a few years?
Sure.
Yeah,
It's a perfectly appropriate question. Get asked all the time.
yeah.
I believe very strongly in diversifying your distribution. There are three channels. Actually, there are four channels today of distribution for apparel that's direct to consumer. There's, of your own. There's stores of your own, brick and mortar. There are online retailers like Shopbop and Net-a-Porter. And there's wholesale. I don't suggest that you limit yourself to any one of these channels. The only thing that's critical when you're planning to emerge as a business is that you're pricing appropriately for all of these channels. Now, if you're selling direct to consumer and you're marking your product up 2 times because it's just direct to consumer, so you reap the benefit of the full margin, and then you go to sell wholesale, it's not going to work because wholesale is going to mark it up again 2.5 times. So you're going to be selling at retail at Bloomingdale's for 2.5 times the price that you're selling on your own website. So that doesn't work. So I strongly support omni-channel distribution as long as you understand from day one that your margin has to be appropriate to manage all of these different channels.
Mm,
There are so many retailers in this world. Yes, we see problems with some of the large ones. We've seen Matches and we've seen Saks, Fifth Avenue, etc., go bankrupt to have problems. But there are 10,000 specialty stores in this world, in this country, in the United States alone. And we work with all of them from one brand or another. What I do frequently for brands, particularly younger brands, is I supply them with a list of stores we are credit approving. So I'm not
mm,
sending them names of stores that can't pay their bills, that we are credit approving with contact information, address, name, etc. And we can compile lists for whatever category of product you're designing into by virtue of aggregating similar brands in our portfolio and the stores that they are selling to. So,
mhm.
because you need to know that when you're in a store, who your adjacencies are going to be at retail. And if there are no products in that store that are similar to yours, then it's not worth reaching out to them. So that's my answer in a nutshell to you.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we have a few more questions in the chat. I have one from Bonnie from GPay Apparel. He says, or she says, it would appear that the smallest brands you represent rake in about 100,000 a year. Does this mean we have to scale first and be in retail stores in order to have a conversation with your company?
Good question. I talk to everybody and anybody. I go to 50 shows a season in New York during New York Fashion Week. I go to Paris. I like to look at the young emerging designers, whether it's a show or just a presentation, or whether just go to their workroom and see what they're doing. I can't say that I will start funding you until there are invoices that I can fund against. But I love to look at early stage. As I said, I've done this. My first designer, when I first started financing fashion, which nobody was doing at the time, I met somebody in a social environment. Her name was Betsy Johnson. I don't know if any of you know who she is as a designer. This was a very long time ago, and Betsy had just left a retail store that she was designing for exclusively, and she decided to open up her own brand. She didn't know what to do. First time ever. She had about $10,000 or $12,000 in orders from a couple of stores. And we met in a social situation in New York, and she said, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to make it. I don't know how to collect from these. I said, maybe I can help you. And she was my client for 14 years. When Betsy left, she had almost 100 retail stores, and she was doing $140 million in volume. So I started with Betsy the day she opened her doors. And I've never walked away from that philosophy and that love, actually, of discovering somebody who really has the talent, who has filled all those buckets that I've been discussing in my talk with you, and is ready to start going. I can generally tell when somebody's got it, when they really understand what they need to do. And it makes it easier for me to work with someone who has $30,000 in orders to start. I don't have limits. We're a private business. I don't put those kinds of limits on what I'm willing to do for people. I care very much about the individuals, their character, their personality. I have to judge whether they can do this, whether they have the stamina, whether they have the ability, whether they can handle all of the challenges of being an entrepreneur in business. And they're not easy. So yes, I'm very accustomed to working with startups, new brands. Certainly I'll look and guide up to the point where I really can help financially.
Awesome. Okay, so we have another question from Emmanuel, which says, how do you realistically navigate the tension between sustainable practices and maintaining a viable price point?
It's very difficult. I have to admit, I was judging a fashion competition yesterday, and one of the categories was sustainability. And each of the brands that was showing in this competition, except for one actually, each had challenges in scaling, meaning they found it really difficult to make enough product to build a business, whether it was their sourcing or the product that they chose. I mean, one of the designers who's immensely talented was taking product from Goodwill Services, where they collect used garments, repurposing them and making beautiful things out of them. And his question to me is, how do I scale? So in many of the businesses that want to focus on sustainability, the one question is scalability, and how do you do that with sustainable product without being ridiculously expensive? And that's, the cost of it, of course, is what you asked about. I had a brand yesterday that made their fabric out of repurposed plastic bottles, and the fabric felt fantastic. It was like soft as silk. It was great. But the limit, the source of the product is limited. And again, the issue of scalability became a problem. So I think we need to be all of us need to be concerned about sustainability. And there are some simple ways we can contribute to that are not costly. For example, zero waste in our cutting rooms. I don't know how many of you, I don't see people here, I just see names, so I don't know how many of you understand what zero waste is. But when you create a pattern and your pattern doesn't take into consideration the shape of a roll of fabric, and you're just cutting and 1/3 of the fabric is ending up on the cutting room floor, you're wasting 1/3 of your fabric. So zero waste is a sustainable term that we use in the industry. And it saves so much more than so many of these other, what we hope are sustainable sourcing. You can do it yourself in your cutting room and save the world by 30% of what normally goes to waste and goes into your scrap bags. So there are ways to be sustainable that are scalable. And it's creativity, it's designing patterns that are more practical, that learning to design, like a Norma Kamali, learning to design into a fabric where you use the entire width of the fabric. And your product is diverse and easily converted to from a blouse to a dress to a sweater. So these are areas that you can focus on if you want to be a sustainable brand and start experimenting with other aspects of sustainability. But it can begin in very unexpected places. And I think we need to be aware of all of those.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question in the chat, a couple more, or three more. Adebola says, I would like to know what operational systems you expect a fashion brand to have in place before you are comfortable financing their receivables.
If you're referring to ERP systems, it's not, we integrate with every ERP system. If you're going to sell into the United States, you're going to sell a department store, you need to be EDI compliant, or they're going to charge you and the stores are going to charge you. So, if we're talking about that aspect of systems in a business, you have to be at least aware of it as you start to scale. You don't need to have an ERP system, they're expensive. You need to be able to send us PDFs. You need to be able to generate invoices that are not handwritten, simple things. You need to be able to put a production chart together. You need to be able to do cost sheets internally. You can't just be on the fly about, I need a yard of this and maybe 2 yards of this and put it all together and then we'll try to price it. You can't do that. You need to do cost sheets in advance. So if this is what you're referring to, there are certain components of organizational components that you must have, and it's more knowledge of what it takes to make a garment. I don't care how sophisticated your systems are. That doesn't mean anything to me, as long as you can get the information to us that we need into our online or our website, which is where everything goes on. We even have people here who will take a handwritten order book and enter it manually for a client if while they're growing and while they're learning the other systems that they need to have ultimately. So I think it's basically about knowledge, about what you need to properly produce a product that I'm interested in, not the technological sophistication of what you might or might not have.
Great, thank you so much, Gary. Adebella, I hope that answered your question. If not, feel free to put more in the chat. But we'll be rounding up shortly. So we have a couple more questions in the chat. We'll take those two. I think I'll actually put them together. And then we'll hear from Jennifer, who has her hands raised. And I think we may close that from there, unless there's any other urgent questions or comments. So Anne, who is on one of our leadership team members, says, are you specifically looking to expand your services to designers in Africa? Have you worked with anyone who is based in Africa? And then there's a follow-up from Tide, who says, for a brand outside the US, what would make you take them seriously enough to even consider working with them?
Okay, well, first, yes, I have worked with brands that manufacture in Africa and design in Africa. I've worked with brands that design in Bali, in Ukraine, in Romania, in Lithuania, in just about every country in the world. We do a lot of business. Obviously, Japan is a fashion center. Australia has thousands of great brands, their own categories. They specialize in certain things. So the answer is yes. I have nothing holding me back from financing. I shouldn't say financing it. I'll get to that in a second. From factoring brands globally. Now, each country, whether it's in the EU or in Africa, has its own rules governing who can finance a brand there. I am not permitted to lend money to Italian companies. I am not an Italian bank, and the same for France. I can in most of the rest of the EU, but France and Italy, I cannot, unless they have New York corporations where they're selling their product to the New York corporation, and then the New York corporation is distributing it in North America. Then I can finance the New York corporation. So I can't tell you, yes, I can finance in every country in Africa. I'd have to research every single one. But I have done so, not researched. I have financed companies in Africa. And it has its own unique set of challenges. Most revolve around production and delivering on time. I think it's because Africa is not, many of the countries in Africa have not yet ramped up the way China has, and Vietnam has in terms of production ability. So when you get into larger quantities, it becomes challenging. But I'm sure many countries are overcoming that. I have no restrictions whatsoever.
Okay, I'm not sure if that answers the second part of the question, which says, what will make you take a brand outside the US seriously enough to consider working with them?
What I've said all along.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me what your geographical location is, as long as you meet the criteria that I said previously in terms of the product and your knowledge and ability. Geographics is nothing. I mean, California is as far from New York as most of Canada. So it doesn't matter to me where you are, only that you're able to do the things that you need to do to be successful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. So leave the last question for Jennifer. Jennifer, please, over to you. Also one of our leadership team members.
Sure.
Hello, Gary. Nice to meet you. I think I probably came across you about 2 or 3 years ago, or even more. Maybe actually during the pandemic. Were you in one of WIN, WWIN, on a panel or something with Sima Scaling Retail? And I took a note to get back to you. We're still building for your standards. But there was one question that was always lingering in my mind, and I suppose it's quite simple, but it has to do with returns and end of season. So if we're shipping from Africa and we get all the bits right at first, and then it gets into one of those departmental stores and then end of season or there's some returns. Where does in the case of shipping and all that, do the goods have to come back to us in Africa and covers the cost, or is there any sort of arrangement around that with
Oh,
regards
we
to
have
custom?
only if you had a arrangement with a warehouse here who could store it for you, and then you could sell it off price once it comes back. We do have many companies that sell all of other multiple brands off price product. When it gets returned or the end of the season, it's marked down and so on. I think we, the reason I say you should be omni-channel is when you have returns, if you have a direct-to-consumer opportunity, if you have a website where you can sell product, it's always best to bring it back to your own warehouse under your own control and resell it on your website. So, if you are omni-channel, that gives you a lot more opportunity. Inventory that is returned that ages in a warehouse becomes less and less valuable every month. So you never want to sit on inventory for any long period of time. We're in a fashion world, and you can't resell it as new product again in the next season or 2 seasons from now. So it's best to liquidate it as soon as you possibly can. If it means putting it in a warehouse here and finding an off-price reseller, then that's an opportunity. If it's taking it back and putting it on your website, that's an opportunity. Just don't sit on it.
Thank you. That answers the question. Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you so much. Thank you, Gary. I'm happy that we are finishing right on time. So I just want to take a moment to thank Gary again. If we can all just give him a virtual round of applause for taking the time out this afternoon to share with us. As I said earlier, this is just the start of a series that we're going to be having. So we hope to build on the knowledge and the insights that he shared with us today. And we continue to encourage you to stay in contact with us at BAF. Follow us on social. We have your emails now, so we'll share with you more as we have more of these sessions. And of course, also we'll send you the recording from this so that you can go back and rewatch and hopefully digest more context on what Gary has shared with us today. So thank you to each and every one of you guys again for being here with us. And thank you especially to Gary for taking the time. We wish you all a wonderful rest of your day and have a good rest of the week. Take care, everyone.
Bye.